I found out at my father's funeral that I had a twin brother, and my whole life was a lie. My father, Richard, was always the rock of our family. He was not the type of man who showed affection easily, but when he smiled, it felt like the whole world became brighter. People respected him, admired him, maybe even feared him sometimes. But to me, he was simply Dad, my hero. I remember how he fixed my broken bike when I was a kid, how he helped me fly my kite high into the sky, how he sat quietly listening to my endless stories like nothing else in the world mattered. When I got the phone call that night telling me he had passed away, it felt like the ground disappeared beneath my feet. A heart attack. No warnings. No chance to say goodbye. At his funeral, the church was overflowing. Friends, neighbors, people I had not seen in years came to honor him. I sat in the front row with my mother, Helen. I held her trembling hand tightly. She looked straight ahead, lost in her own world of grief. I tried to be strong for her. I tried to be the man my father had always wanted me to become. Then I saw him. A young man, about my age, stood near the entrance of the church. He did not come inside. He just stood there, staring at the casket with a deep sadness that hit me in a way I could not explain. There was something about him that felt familiar. The way he tilted his head slightly, the way he pressed his lips together, fighting back tears. For a brief moment, an insane thought crossed my mind. He looks like me. I shook my head quickly. It was impossible. He was probably just someone my father had helped long ago. My father had touched many lives, many more than I would ever know. Still, something about him kept pulling at my mind. After the service ended, while people were making their way to the cemetery, I felt someone approaching from behind. I turned around. It was him. I saw my mother's face freeze. She went pale, her lips trembling as she stared at him and then at me. It was as if she had seen a ghost. The young man stopped a few steps away. He looked at me with red eyes full of pain. "I am sorry for your loss," he said, his voice cracking. "I lost my father, too." My stomach twisted into a tight knot. Before I could say anything, my mother whispered so softly I almost missed it. "No, not now." In that moment, deep inside, I knew. This man was not just a stranger. Something bigger, something terrifying, was about to come crashing into my life. The man stood there, just a few feet away, with sadness written all over his face. I could feel the weight of his stare, and something inside me kept whispering that this moment was not random. There was a reason he was here, and it was not just to mourn my father. I took a small step forward, and so did he. For a long moment, we simply looked at each other. I could see it more clearly now. His eyes, his nose, even the curve of his jawline mirrored mine. It was not my imagination. He looked like me, almost exactly like me. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely steady. He hesitated, glancing toward my mother. Her expression was frozen, full of fear and pain. When she did not say anything, he turned back to me and spoke. "My name is Michael," he said, "and I think I am your brother." The words hit me harder than anything I had ever felt. For a second, the world around me blurred. I could hear the murmur of people walking past, the distant cries from the cemetery. But inside me, there was only silence. My brother? No, it could not be. I would have known. I would have felt it. Families do not keep something like this hidden. Do they? I turned to my mother, searching her face for a denial, for some sign that this was a mistake. Instead, tears welled up in her eyes, and she shook her head slowly. "I am so sorry, Daniel," she whispered. "There are things you do not know, things we never meant for you to find out like this." I took a step back, my mind spinning. Memories flooded me, small things that had never made sense before. The guarded conversations between my parents. The strange, unexplained tension whenever certain topics came up. How had I been so blind? I looked back at Michael. He stood there with his hands clenched into fists, as if holding himself together with sheer will. "I found out only a few weeks ago," he said. His voice broke. "I never knew either. Not until recently. Part of me wanted to run, to escape the unbearable pressure building inside me. But another part, stronger, needed answers. How? I asked, my throat dry. How is this even possible? Michael took a shaky breath. Our father, Richard, he said. He knew. My mother told me everything after he passed. She said she had kept it a secret for years. That there were reasons I needed to hear. I stared at him, feeling the ground shift again under my feet. If he was telling the truth, my entire life had been built on a lie. And yet, deep inside, some part of me already believed him. I thought losing my father was the worst thing that could ever happen to me. But standing there, looking into the face of a brother I never knew I had, I realized the worst was only just beginning. The ride back home after the funeral felt longer than I ever imagined. Silence filled the car, thick and heavy. I sat in the back seat, staring out the window, while my mother gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Michael followed behind us in his own car. I caught glimpses of him through the side mirror. He looked as lost as I felt. When we arrived home, my mother went straight to the living room and sat down without even taking off her coat. She looked older, smaller, as if the weight of the secret she had carried for so long had finally crushed her. I stood there for a moment, unsure what to do, my heart pounding in my chest. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. I never wanted it to happen this way, she said. I thought I was protecting you, protecting all of us. I sat down across from her. Start from the beginning, I said. I need to know everything. She closed her eyes for a moment, gathering her strength. When you were born, she said, you were not alone. You and Michael, you were twins. But our family, our situation, was complicated. We were young, struggling. Your father had just lost his job. My parents were pressuring us, saying we could not handle 2 children, that it would ruin our lives. Her voice cracked. She wiped away a tear. They convinced us to give one of you up for adoption. They said it was the best choice, that it would give both of you a better chance. We were scared. We were foolish. I sat there frozen, struggling to absorb her words. You chose him? I asked, my voice cold. No, she said quickly. It was not that simple. We did not choose. My father, your grandfather, he arranged everything without telling us. He took Michael and placed him with a family far away. We were told afterward that it was done, that it was too late to undo it. My hands clenched into fists on my knees. I could feel the anger rising, burning in my chest. You should have fought for him, I said. You should have told me. Tears streamed down her face now. I wanted to, every day. But how could I tell you that we failed you both so terribly? Behind me, I heard the front door creak. Michael stepped in quietly, carrying an old, worn envelope in his hand. I found this, he said, his voice shaking. It is from your father. He wrote it before he died. It is addressed to both of us. He handed it to me. My fingers trembled as I took it. I looked at Michael, then at my mother, who sat there with her head bowed in shame. I knew that opening that letter would change everything. But part of me needed the truth, no matter how much it hurt. As I broke the seal and unfolded the paper inside, I could not help but wonder. What else had they hidden from me? What more was there left to lose? My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter. The paper was old and creased, and the ink had faded slightly with time, but the handwriting was unmistakable. It was my father's. Michael stood silently across the room, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, like he was bracing for a storm. My mother sat motionless on the couch, tears still running down her face. I took a deep breath and began to read. Daniel and Michael, the letter began, if you are reading this, then the truth has finally found its way to you. I owe you both an apology greater than words can express. I made a choice that day that I have regretted every single moment since. I swallowed hard, already feeling the sting of betrayal deep in my chest. When you were born, the letter continued, your mother and I were desperate. We had no money, no stability, no future that we could see. But beyond the fear, there was another reality. The doctors warned us that one of you might face serious health problems. They could not say for sure which one. They urged us to consider the risks. I paused, feeling my mouth go dry. Your grandfather, the letter went on, believed he was protecting us all by making the decision for us. He took the child he thought was weaker, the one he believed would suffer most, and placed him for adoption. We never had a say. We were told it was better not to know where he was, better to move forward. But I never stopped thinking about you both. I never stopped wondering what kind of men you would become. I lowered the letter slowly, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. All this time, my life had been built on a lie. And not just a simple lie, but a cruel calculation. They had gambled with our lives. They had separated two brothers based on fear and a guess. I looked up at my mother. She was sobbing now, her shoulders shaking uncontrollably. You thought he was the weaker one, I said quietly, my voice hollow. You gave him away because you thought he was less likely to survive. She shook her head desperately. No, Daniel, it was not like that. We were manipulated. We were scared. Michael stepped closer, his face hard but calm. I am not angry, he said softly. Not anymore. I just want to know who I am. I want to know my family. His words hit me harder than any accusation could have. How could he still want anything to do with us after everything? I stood there, caught between fury and guilt, between the past I thought I knew and the truth that had just shattered it. I realized, with a deep ache, that nothing would ever be the same again. Not for me, not for Michael, not for any of us. And what scared me most was knowing that the hardest part was still to come. Because forgiveness was never going to be easy. And rebuilding trust, that might be impossible. The following days felt like living in a fog. I went through the motions of everyday life, but my mind was stuck in that living room, stuck in that moment when the world had fallen apart. Michael called a few times. I did not answer. He sent a message once. It was simple. I just want to know you. No pressure. When you are ready. I stared at the message for a long time. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. I wanted to delete it, to pretend none of this had ever happened. But deep inside, something held me back. Late one evening, I sat alone in my room, holding the letter from our father. I read it again and again, hoping the words would change. Hoping for some different ending. But the words stayed the same. The truth stayed the same. I thought about the childhood I had lived, about the memories I had built, about the father I had loved. And I thought about Michael, growing up without us, never knowing he had a brother, never knowing he had been left behind. Was it fair to blame him? Was it fair to blame anyone? The truth was messy. It was ugly. But it was real, and it was ours now. I found myself standing in front of the mirror, looking at my reflection. For the first time, I wondered how much of who I was had been shaped by the lie I'd lived. And I wondered who I could become now that I knew the truth. The next morning, I got into my car without thinking too much about it. I drove across town to a small park. Michael was there, sitting on a bench, staring at the lake. He looked up when he saw me. He did not smile. He just waited. I sat down next to him. We sat there in silence for a long time. I could feel the weight of everything between us. All the years, all the pain, all the questions that might never have answers. Finally, I spoke. I do not know how to do this, I said. I do not even know if I can. Michael nodded. Me neither, he said. But maybe we can figure it out together. His words were simple. No grand promises. No pressure. Just an open door. And that was when I realized the impossible choice was not between forgetting and remembering. It was between closing the door forever or leaving it open, even just a crack. I thought about our father, about the mistakes he made, about the love he tried to leave behind in a letter too late. Maybe healing was not about forgetting the betrayal. Maybe it was about building something new out of the broken pieces. I looked at Michael, and for the first time, I did not see a stranger. I saw a chance. A small one, a fragile one. But sometimes, even a fragile chance is worth everything. And in that moment, I decided to take it. Because even if trust would take a lifetime to rebuild, it had to start somewhere. And maybe, just maybe, it could start here. Weeks passed. Some days felt lighter, others heavy and confusing. My emotions shifted like the weather. Some mornings I would wake up with peace, ready to move forward. Other days I felt anger crawl back into my chest, wrapping around my heart like a cold fist. But Michael was patient. He never pushed. He never asked for more than I could give. Sometimes we just talked about simple things. Work, movies, childhood memories that we had never shared, but somehow still echoed in both of us. And slowly, almost without noticing, the distance between us began to shrink. One evening, as we sat on the back porch of my mother's house, watching the sunset, she came outside. Her eyes were tired, but her hands were calm for the first time in weeks. "I know I can't fix what we did," she said quietly. "I know I failed both of you. But I am so grateful you're here now. Both of you." We didn't say anything at first. Then Michael smiled faintly and nodded. "I never thought I'd hear her say that," he whispered later. "I didn't think there would be a place for me. There still wasn't a perfect place. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But there was space. And sometimes that's enough." I think about my father a lot. I think about how much he tried to be good, even when he made terrible choices. I think about how much fear must have guided those early years, and how that fear shaped everything that came after. And I think about the letter he left behind. Not just for what it said, but for what it didn't. For the apology that came too late, but still mattered. For the hope that, somehow, we might build something new out of the pain. I used to believe family was about memories, about holidays and birthdays and shared stories. But now I understand. Family is also about showing up, even when it's hard. It's about choosing to stay, choosing to forgive, choosing to try again. Michael and I may never have the kind of bond that brothers raised together do. But we have something else. We have a shared beginning we never knew we had, and a shared future we get to shape. And that might be even more powerful. I don't know how this story will end. But I do know where it begins again. Right here. With honesty. With effort. With two strangers who share a face, and now, maybe, a life. If you had asked me before the funeral who I was, I would have said I was the son of Richard and Helen. Now, I would say the same. But I would also say this: I am the brother of Michael. And that truth, though painful, is mine. I choose to carry it. I choose to live it. Because sometimes, even after a lie, the truth is strong enough to bring something beautiful to life. But what about you? If you discovered a brother you never knew existed, hidden by the people you trusted most, would you open your heart to him, or would you walk away forever?